Where does Africa stand on global affairs? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this other edition of the program. It is Global Insight on For You Media Africa. Today we want to look at Africa's agenda. You know, the Africa's Blueprint Agenda 2063 talks of the Africa we want. But now with a lot that has happened, especially at the global arena, with major global shifts, be it on the political, social, and economic spheres, we want to see how the continent Africa can redefine its own strategy, its own agendas to be able to take advantage of the changes happening. It should be noted that in a major global shift, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and of course technological advancement, and most especially the geopolitical realignment, African countries need to adapt and actively shape their agenda to navigate these changes effectively. So today's edition of Global Insight seeks to analyze the political, economic, social, security, science, among others aspects. Now Africa is looking forward to having a strong voice and more engagement in multilateral systems. So the question we're asking is, what strategy would better position Africa, and what do African stakeholders need to do to focus at the moment to meet continental objectives? It is Global Insight, and we are looking at those factors or aspects that could be considered in redefining Africa's agenda in amidst major global dynamics. It's actually a discursive, informative program on For You Media, and together with a panel of experts, we are going to give more details on the program. And our topic for Thursday is centering on how the African continent can redefine its prime objective to meet up with the changing times. And I will introduce to you Dr. AMBE Valentine, who is an entrepreneur, author, as well as political analyst. Hello to you, Dr. Valentine. It's a pleasure having you on a Global Insight platform Thursday.
Thank you, Clarice, for inviting me today. It's been an honor and a privilege also to be here. I'm excited with the topic we are about to treat because, as a matter of fact, this is what is needed now in the continent Africa. Very educative topics are needed on our screens today to rather push the continent rather than raising activism, nationalism, and violence across the continent. I think we need programs that will help develop the minds and challenge the governments of the day to help advance the economic, social, political, as well as technological aspect of the continent Africa. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for the privilege.
And thank you, Dr. AMBE Valentine, for accepting to be with us this day. Like you've underlined, it is indeed an informative program with objective to redefine a mindset and perspectives across Africa and see how the continent can define and make its voice heard, especially at the international arena. We're going to Cameroon's political capital. Let's meet HENRI, who is a founder and executive director, Cameroon Economic Policy Institute, CEPI. Hello to you, HENRI, and it's a pleasure having you this day on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and good afternoon to both you and to all of your watchers. I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to exchange and share about how we can improve our continent.
Indeed, it's about how we can change narratives across our continent, be it on political, economic, social lines, and you can name the rest. Dr. AMBE Valentine, I always want to start holistically for us to understand the stakes of our topic today, which centers on redefining Africa's agenda amid major global shifts.
Yes, Clarice. I'll be very blunt and straightforward discussing this topic and addressing very strategic issues that concern the continent Africa. I'll begin by saying that until Africa understands its uniqueness, they cannot excel on the global stage. This is because most of what is done in Africa is a copy and paste affair. Our governments have not found the uniqueness of this continent, and so they don't approach challenges in this continent based on our own indigenous ideas and skills and abilities. It is important to gather knowledge from every angle, but you must understand the uniqueness of your challenge in applying that knowledge. And I think that is where we are missing it. I'll begin by going back to the 80s, the 85, 86, 87, when the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank came with a structural adjustment program, the Millennium Development Goals, as well as privatization. Our continent, or leaders of this continent, embraced those philosophies without actually understanding its practical application in the continent Africa. The Millennium Development Goals, number one was to eradicate poverty and lack in developing countries. But since those principles were introduced, we are entering into serious problems. We were also to annihilate infant mortality rate and aligning the 8 Millennium Development Goals that were introduced some years back by the Europeans. And we embraced those Millennium Development Goals in this continent, Africa, and things are getting worse by the day. They also to develop the primary educational sector of the continent.
Absolutely.
All those laws that were established as the Millennium Development Goals, 8 of them, were applied in this continent and did not produce any result. We equally had the structural adjustment programs introduced by the World Bank and the IMF in order to help develop African communities. It was to absorb resources from the administrative sector in order to develop the nation. But unfortunately, those principles have proven to be very abortive and unproductive and unsuccessful as the years go by. Why should we, as Africans, always want to get ideas from outsiders to apply in a continent that does not suit those ideas? Why should our leaders always wait for the next thing that is coming up in Europe, America, to be applied here? Africa is unique. China has grown. And China did not grow by borrowing ideas from Europe. They could borrow their technology, but their modus operandi is different. Yeah. That's the reason why there's communism in China, there's democracy in America, there's democracy in England, and the English democracy is parliamentary democracy, not democracy as the one they force on us. Absolutely, now we should be able to understand the context on which we operate, and now we'll bring our own ideas to fit our community so they can bring development. But you see, the challenge is that almost every continent is unique in their approach. You go to India, India still maintains the religion of Hinduism. Absolutely, India is still very focused with the worship of their 100 gods. It has not changed, but there is a rapid development in India in terms of technology, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of everything you can put in place. Yeah. That has to do with their uniqueness. India was not what it is today. China was not what it is today. Absolutely, but if you look at Africa, we keep duplicating to the extent where I heard the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, in France, saying that when the COVID-19 break out in the continent Africa, they went to the World Trade Center to ask for permission to produce their own vaccine because the vaccine wasn't sufficient.
And that's where
Why
the
should we take permission to treat human lives from the World Trade Center? And they were denied the opportunity from producing their own vaccines, not because it is unfortunate that you are sick and you have the cure to the sickness, but some laws are guiding you not to produce the drug that will treat you from that sickness. That is my cry as far as this continent is concerned. Redefining Africa's agenda amid major global shift is only a sign that we have to start developing indigenous ideas and skills and abilities to fit within the continent Africa. Because in every ramification, it is a copy and paste philosophy that is affecting this continent terribly. If you look, almost everybody is rising. Go to South America, Brazil is rising. Their ideas are not coming from Europe. Look at India. India is breaking grounds. Pakistan, they are breaking grounds. Look at Rwanda in Africa. Yeah. They are breaking grounds because they have refused to embrace some things that were introduced to our continent. Look, for instance, Botswana is a country that has free education. They give free healthcare. They have a lot of opportunities, almost like Europe. Yeah. Why? They are still in the continent Africa. This is because they have embraced a unique approach to handling their own issues in their country. And this so-called introduced general principles by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank is what is affecting this continent. So if Africa has to redefine its agenda.
Yeah.
Africa must operate in its uniqueness. Africa must operate in its ability. Africa should be able to create its own indigenous ideas in how to solve its own problems. This is where I think we have to go into it. I will come back to elaborate on the structural adjustment programs, the Millennium Development Goals, as well as privatization policies that were introduced in Africa around the 80s. From 1980 to date, it's approximately 44 years of what impact has those particular principles done to the continent Africa.
Of course, impact in terms of development and changing the living standard of Africans. And this is where we see the lapses of the multilateral system. But there is a change that is ongoing along all lines, like we already mentioned in our preamble. Now, with all of these factors, how can Africa make everything adaptable to the environment on the continent that will suit the population and the prevailing factors? Going straight, let's go now to Yaoundé, getting your own perspective, Henry. We'll start with you with this question. Like, in your opinion, what do you think are those major, especially global economic changes that have occurred so far, and how has African economics reacting to this shift from the perspective of an economist?
Thank you very much for your question, BERI. And I would like to thank Dr. AMBE for reminding us about just how heavy the hand of history can be. I think it's important that we take stock that we didn't get here by operating independently. We got here through a number of policies that have not worked as they initially were intended. And therefore, this has, of course, caused most African countries to arrive where we are. But I would like us to take a step back. When we talk about the global economy, we should remember that we're talking about how countries trade with one another, how countries live with one another. And on that basis, I think it's clear that Africa as a continent is facing a number of risks which don't originate from the continent. First, you have Russia's war in Ukraine. Second, you have Israel and Gaza. Third, you have the lingering effects of the global pandemic. Fourth, we have a situation now where countries don't want to trade with the rest of the world. Countries want to close their borders. Countries want to produce domestically. And all of this is having an adverse effect on African countries and on African producers. So there are several global risks. There are migration crises as well. And there is inflation, which has risen across every single major economy and advanced economy. For us Africans, when inflation increases, it means that people are poorer, because when granite oil costs 20% more 1 year from another, it means that people cannot afford basic food. So the risks we face are twofold. Geopolitical risks, of course, and other economic risks linked to inflation, our huge debt level. 1 in 3 African countries are at risk of high risk of debt distress. What this means is that soon some countries are going to be unable to pay their loans and therefore invest in schools and roads and clean drinking water and the basic electricity that we need to survive every single day. So those are the risks. Now, for Africa, what does it mean? Pardon me. What this means is that you have a continent where by 2030, 60% of our continent is going to be made up of youth. What this means is that we have to find jobs. We also have to ensure that they go to good schools, they have the skills. Just 1 second. They have the skills to make sure that they can get the opportunities and the jobs that they're looking for, to ensure that they live good lives. Now, so when we talk about how Africa can leverage the opportunities, I think we have to come back to what's essential for Africans. Firstly, we have to make sure that we change the way we educate our youths and the young people of this continent. We have to re-emphasize practice and not theory. Now, when I agree with Dr. AMBE when he says that we shouldn't copy and paste from things in the West that have worked. There are certain things in Asia that have worked, and we can take the good things that have worked and apply them on the continent. It's not about just innovating in Africa and forgetting about the world. No. Innovation works both ways. There are things that we do very well in Africa that other countries can learn from, and there are things which other countries do very well that we can learn from. So, coming back to the subject, the world is going through a number of risks. Over 60% of the world went to an election this year, which means that most countries are in an election year. Most countries are facing inflation risks. The war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East is impacting food prices, fuel prices, shipping costs, etc. So life has become expensive at a time when the global economy is much more precarious than it was. For Africa, what this means is that we have to leverage our alliances and create new ones. But the first thing I would like us to remember is that countries that don't trade together cannot work, cannot grow effectively, and cannot industrialize properly. Africa is one of the largest continents, one of the largest continents that we know of so far. And in order for Africa to succeed and for Africans to succeed, we have to push the narrative of free trade. It costs much more to import a car from Africa than to import a car from Europe. Why is that? So sometimes the policies that have been put in place haven't always come from outside. The policies that have been put in place by us. Africa is divided into regional economic communities from ECOWAS to CEMAC to SADC to the Arab Maghreb Union. All of this is good, but you cannot have a fragmented continent trying to find solutions to local problems. We cannot find solutions together if we're separated by various trade deals or high tariffs in one part of the continent versus zero tariffs in other parts of the continent. We have to ensure that African countries trade together. We have to ensure that we bring down tariffs, we facilitate the free movement of people, because if I can move freely and go to Ghana or go to Kenya, then I am much more likely to invest in those countries simply because I have the means and the opportunity to go visit them and see how business is done in those countries. The 2063 agenda of the African Union is noble, but again, we can't have an institution that doesn't rely on its members for funding, but rather foreign donors like the European Union. Nothing wrong with it, but Africans and Africa has to take responsibility. We've also spoken about the issue of, so firstly, Africa has to trade with itself, because although if you look at trade within other parts of the world, you'd find that Europe and North America are much more integrated. They trade with each other. You'd find Canada trades more with the United States. Mexico trades more with the United States than the United States does now with China. What does this mean? This means that these regions have brought down, have reduced import duties and made sure that if you produce a good in one country, you can trade in another country. That is what Africa has to do. And the African Continental Free Trade Area that was signed in 2018 means that we can finally begin trading with each other and also make sure that trade is not expensive, which means that Cameroon flour can be used to make, Cameroon cassava can be used to make flour in Ethiopia, or hides from Nigeria can be used to make bags in Rwanda. We have to make sure that we continue pushing for free trade, and also to make sure that businesses take notice of this, because the African Continental Free Trade Area will not be implemented by government. Businesses have to take notice of the agreements that have been put in place, and they have to leverage this, because trading within ourselves will bring down the prices of goods and services. It would improve the quality of lives of all Africans, and it would also lead to significant increases in job creation. So if there are several risks facing the African economy. But the first thing we have to do is we have to start speaking to each other. We have to start trading with each other. We have to start bringing down
Henry?
tariff and non-tariff barriers.
Yeah, of course. Then that is why we are today looking at how or the perfect strategies that we can use to be able to attain that milestone. Mr. AMBE, Dr. AMBE Valentine, I beg your pardon. When we listen to your introductory remark and that coming from Henry, we see the imbalances that exist in the world, especially when it comes to multilateral systems. It's a globalized society. Now we are looking at how Africa can leverage on these changes to ensure proper development and transformation of the continent. So in your perspective, what are those key aspects that could be considered when redefining Africa's agenda?
Yes, like I said earlier, Clarice, knowledge is permitted to be gathered from anywhere.
Absolutely.
But the application is what is unique.
Sure.
The uniqueness in the application of the knowledge we gather from everywhere is what makes us unique in our own abilities and on our own skills.
Absolutely.
To extend what I just said, let me also say that an act was signed in the AU, I think 2022-23, the African Continental Free Trade Area. That gives an opportunity for countries to intertrade with each other. But you see, it's only on paper. We are told that we have visa-free. Yes, we are visa-free from here to Gabon, but when you reach Gabon, you pay visa at the entry point. That doesn't make it a free trade area. To carry goods from one place to another, it becomes very complicated. Sure. Africa has not permitted itself to trade with one another, but the act has been signed. The question we are supposed to be asking is, how can an act be signed, then the action is not carried? Something must be in between the act and the action. This is what the problem is. And we have a lot of policies we have established in Africa, which are very good policies. Beginning from our nation, Cameroon, if you go through our system, the policies in place, they are very effective, which if allowed to operate effectively, we're going to skyrocket in terms of growth. But unfortunately, most of what is done in Africa is theoretical. We are not practical in our approach. How do you explain that if I want to carry goods from here to Gabon? I will pay custom duties that cannot even permit me to sell the goods and make a turnover. These are some of the things we are supposed to be addressing as far as the policies are concerned. We have very, very, very terrible policies put in place that doesn't permit our people to excel. The truth is, no matter how healthy an animal may be, if you put where there's no oxygen, the animal will die. Absolutely. So Africans should be allowed to breathe. We can't breathe in the continent because a lot of barricades are set in front of us that does not permit potentials, abilities, and skills to be expressed. People are gifted, talented, skillful in Africa, but the atmosphere does not permit them to display or leverage their abilities. Mm-hmm. These are some of the things we have to put into serious consideration when addressing African issues. A talented person like you, a talented person like me, may have abilities and skills, but what is said before us,
when
we are afraid.
Scope is not
Do you
healthy,
know it is? Yeah? I'm even afraid to enter into politics in the country because of the electoral code in place. That's a political ability in me that cannot be expressed because some stringent principles are put on ground that does not permit us to leverage our abilities. Absolutely, so I think Africa, being a continent, first as a continent, mm-hmm. we have to first of all be dealing with national policies in different countries. Countries must be able to set up policies that permit their fellow brothers to easily trade and walk into the economy free of charge. For instance, I was in South Africa in the month of March. Cameroonians go to the South African embassy to get a visa to go to South Africa is hell. I was given 20 days to stay in South Africa. Can you imagine? I'm given 20 days to stay in a country that is part of the AU. A country that's supposed to just pick my passport and fly there freely and land, but I'm given 20 days to stay there. What can I do within 20 days in South Africa? That is a problem. But I traveled to London last September. You see people from Germany jumping into France, people from France jumping into Austria, people from Austria jumping into Holland. It facilitates movement, it facilitates business, it facilitates communication, it facilitates the exchange of goods and services, thereby empowering the economy because the borders are open. The borders are open for free communication. So these are some of the things that I'm trying to lay emphasis on as far as it is concerned.
So can we say, I'm sorry to interject, with all these policies that are put in place, which you have highlighted, that they are very pragmatic, if fully implemented, I
Yes.
beg your pardon, can we say that is the political narratives that countries have that is actually making it difficult to come to the realization of these policies? Because when we talk about political narratives here, I'm looking at how political autonomy
Yes.
would be compromised in trying to implement these policies that advocate for an integrated or unified continent.
That is exactly what I'm trying to outline here. The truth is, there is no economic growth without a political growth. Political growth is what gives birth to economic growth.
Absolutely.
If the political system is corrupted, if the political system is frustrating the economic activities, you will discover that the economy cannot grow. A simple example, a case study, is our nation, Cameroon. Or you go to other African countries I've traveled to. Do you realize that we have more successful civil servants in African countries than businessmen?
And which is supposed to
It
be
is
the contrary.
absolutely inverse. It's the inverse.
Sure.
It is absolutely impossible for an economy to grow where the private sector is subject to the public sector. It is so frustrating to realize that we have billionaires in the civil service and then business people don't have anything to go, because why? In Africa, the signature, the pen, and the stamp of a civil administrator is stronger than the capital of the wealthiest businessman. The stamp, the signature, the pen of a civil administrator can shut down a business of 50 million. That tells you that the people who are in offices, who are not the one trading in the market, they are the ones who are managing what takes place in the market. And if the people in the market are not given the opportunity to breathe very well, there is no way there can be growth in an economy. You go to any country in Europe and America, the private sector is always stronger than the civil sector, than the civil service. But that's the inverse in Africa. And that is where the challenge is. And I think if we don't change the narrative by giving the private sector the opportunity for the businessmen to expand, there is no way we can advance. Travel and preach all whatever we are preaching here, nothing will happen, because there is an inverse in growth as far as Africa is concerned.
Yes.
The private sector is supposed to be the giant and the economic sector of the country. But you see, almost all the people who are into the private sector, they have stepped into the public sector because they want to use their offices to defend their businesses. They are not using their offices to serve the common man.
Serve the common man.
Politics is not a platform
Absolutely.
to defend your business. It's a vocation called to serve the common man. And the poorest person is supposed to be the politician. But unfortunately, the richest people, because politics is a selfless sacrifice. Politics is somebody offering his life for the betterment of generation. Politicians work for posterity, not prosperity.
Not to interject you, just to highlight what the leadership of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto said yesterday. When you are elected to a position of leadership, it's for you to lead and serve, but not to be popular.
Of course, and that is exactly what is happening in Cameroon, in most African countries. I have said it, I'm repeating it. Politicians work for posterity. They don't work for prosperity. But unfortunately in Africa, we have prosperous politicians. The legacy of a nation is in the hands of selfless leaders who are ready to sacrifice their own bare earth in order to protect and secure the next generation. And I think if this inverse is not corrected, we may beat around the bush with all the potentials and skills and abilities we have, we can never excel.
Absolutely, and of course that is where the problematic lies, and these questions have been occurring every time. Why is it that we are in an era of a rebirth, an era of renaissance in Africa, where both our political, economic, and even civil society actors are now conversant with the way the global world functions? And then what makes it difficult now to implement new strategies in our various countries to ensure transformation in the respective continents, especially in Africa. This we're going to be answering now as we unfold with the program. Let's go again with you, HENRI KOUAM. We're talking earlier on, you highlighted some of the challenges the global world is facing, the war on Gaza, the proxy war in Ukraine, and other problems faced by the global world. You equally highlighted the fact that the African continent seems to be not treated well on aspects of credit rating. So our next question is now, under the auspices of the African Union, Africa's #1 institutional body, the African states wants to actually address this unfairness when it comes to credit rating. So they want to create a rating agenda or agency for the continent to consider bias, to counter bias and unfairness from rating agencies like the Modi, S&P, Fitch, among others. So the question now is, how do you analyze the objectiveness of the aforementioned agencies in dealing with African countries when it comes to credit rating, and how this helps to derail the economic trajectory of countries across Africa? Hello, HENRI. Dr. AMBE, unfortunately we can't get through to HENRI for, I think, some technical issues. You may want to comment on this question. We're looking at the place of credit rating agencies like the Modi, S&P, and how the African continent under the African Union is advocating for the creation of a continental credit rating agency to counter this bias or unfairness when it comes to the credit rating statistics coming from these international bodies like S&P and Modi.
Clarice, I want to put it straight to you that Africa doesn't lack ideas. Africans have solutions to all what is eating them up. That Africans have not been given the opportunity to exercise the solutions.
Who has to give Africa the opportunity?
That's why I'm letting you understand.
Sure.
He that sponsors you and he that feeds you has control over you. I heard that my brother KOUAM said that it's not bad to have received foreign aid or AU being sponsored by foreigners. Mm-hmm. It is bad to me because, and that's the reason why they regulate the policies that operates in the AU.
Yeah.
They are the ones who influence the activities and the decisions of the AU. The AU has very intelligent, brilliant, and very excellent individuals. And if you go there and hear the ideas those guys come up with every day, you'll be amazed. Mm-hmm. I heard Ruto of recent said they are tired of being packed into buses when attending conferences like the France-Africa Summit, the Franco-Russia, the Africa-Russia Summit, the US-Russia Summit. African head of states are being loaded into buses like sardine. And Ruto said, according to the agreement, the last AU meeting, they were to send just about 7 representatives to go and represent Africa in each of the conferences.
Yeah.
We are yet to see the first France-Africa conference, Russia-Africa conference, or China-Africa conference. If I thought they would send 7 persons to go there and represent them. Mm-hmm. It has not happened. Those are ideas our people have. But unfortunately, it is very difficult. That tells you that he that sponsors you call the shots for you. In the AU, do you know Israel was asking for an observatory seat in the AU? And 75% of the income spent upon the AU and ECOWAS is coming from outside. How do you expect these blocks that are being sponsored from outside to make decisions for themselves? It is absolutely impossible. We keep hammering on this thing because we understand the crux of the matter. Yes. We are dealing with these issues from the root. We may discuss a lot of intelligent ideas that can help Africa grow, but as long as these men are still holding these organizations bound from the background, there's no way we can excel. That is, it is not shocking to realize that Africans leave Africa to go and borrow money from World Bank,
absolutely,
International Monetary Fund, when we have African Development Bank, Where is the money from African Development Bank coming from? 70% of the income in the African Development Bank comes from abroad. So if at all we have African Development Bank and the bank is meant for development, and Russia, Cameroon needs money, Kenya needs money, Uganda needs money, we go back to International Monetary Fund, we go back to World Bank, it tells you that that thing is just a structure kept there to convince us that we also have a development bank. We have African Import and Export Bank.
Yeah.
That bank also is a bank that has income for import and export. Why don't you collect money from there and do? We have the Atijari Wafa group of banks in Morocco. They are rich. Why don't you get money from there? There are individuals in Africa who are financially buoyant to the extent that they can lend to nations. Why don't we take money from them? We go and collect money from IMF and World Bank with stupendous rates, interest rates. We come back home, we build bridges, we build stadia, we build roads. We now begin to do what we call absorbing the resources of the administration in order to cover loans. So much so that teachers and policemen and military men and civil servants, their salaries are being slashed every single year to record money from there and sponsor or pay back the loans we took to construct structures. The human beings that make the economy run, their salaries are being reduced to pay loans that were used to construct roads, to construct bridges. Therefore, making the educational sector and even the health sector suffer casualties because we are not taking care of structures and not taking care of the human beings that run the structures.
Indeed,
this is what we call structural adjustment programs. This is deficient. It's a deficiency to the continent Africa. So we are trying to say that as much as we appreciate ideas from out of the country, when we take those ideas, we should not do copy and paste. We should take these ideas, put them on ground, and try to analyze how it fits within the African continent. That's why I said even our system of health, the approach to our health condition, it should be different. The tropical diseases we have here, they are not in Europe, they are not in America. It will shock you if you travel to the US and you are sick of malaria, you will have to send news back to Africa for them to combine leaves and give you to get well. Typhoid the same. In Canada, if you have a social security number, you are given an injection or a vaccine that prevents you from having typhoid for the next 10 years. But you and I, after every 2 months, 3 months, we are sick of typhoid. How do we handle health issues that concern this Africa with ideas from people who are not suffering our sicknesses?
Indeed. And just to add to that, and of course it's still a question, Dr. AMBE Valentine, while talking we have identified some of these issues that the continent is facing, and coming back to the international financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. I remember it was just yesterday that it's a youth expert from Ghana in the person of Ahmed, where they were actually advocating the agenda of the African continent with the United Nations. It was a program created by the United Nations, and he was so categorical to say that when the IMF and the World Bank, even if they want to loan out money to countries in Africa or the global south, even, you see the conditions of attached to these loans, like the actually asks you to, okay, I'm giving you this money, but you are going to use this money to maybe construct a road that is leading to an area that is fertile with resources. And it becomes very problematic. Like if a company is in Dinate, the company knows, or a country actually knows what it wants at a particular moment. Why dictate for the continent
how to spend the money?
How to spend the money. And and in addition, recently I read on the newspaper, the United Nations was the United States, I beg your pardon, was discussing on how to expand its resource base, because with the fact that the China that they usually rely on for raw materials that we need, especially cobalt and other raw materials that will help in the production of batteries for electronic cars, with all the geopolitical realignment and perspective changes, they're trying to extend their search to Africa. Now this is where Africa has to capitalize,
Of course.
use this valuable
Take
resource
advantage.
of maybe raw materials to redefine their policies of maybe international relations. What do you think, and how do you think they can go about it to capitalize on the fact that the raw materials on the continent are actually seducing these so-called global powers, especially the US, to capitalize on it and make sure that one raw material that is leaving, or mineral that is leaving, cobalt or whatever, it should actually transcend to the level of development in that area?
Yes, you see, sometimes you see these opportunities linger in the air and you think we can grasp them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things beneath the surface that we do not understand operate as far as these raw materials are concerned.
Sure.
Let me just shift a bit from what we are discussing, then come back to it. Do you know that the outbreak of the COVID-19 brought out potentials in Africa that would have never needed Europe for anything again?
Absolutely.
That was a platform to show us that we are able, we are capable, we have the ability. You realize that we had our own face mask that we created here, and it sustained us throughout the COVID-19. I want to ask you a question. Since the COVID-19 disappeared, have you seen those face masks anymore? We've gone back to use the ones that come from China and come from Europe. We created our own test machines for the COVID-19. Since the COVID-19 disappeared, have you heard about it again? We also did our own gels to wash our hands in order to disinfect ourselves. But you realize that almost every gel we're using is coming from China. What has happened to those creative abilities we had within the period of that COVID-19 when the whole world was shot against Africa? We had no access going out or coming in. This is to let you understand that there are a lot of things that if we don't come to a dead end as Africans, we won't be given the opportunity to exploit them. Not because we don't have the skill. It will shock you that there are Africans who can find a permanent cure to malaria, but if they dare, they will be eliminated by the pharmaceutical companies. There are also Africans who can create vehicles. And that's the reason why sometimes I get a bit worried with the system of education we keep saying that we have here. We claim that we are having the Anglo-Saxon system of education. That's education that was taken from Britain and transferred to Africa. That means it is a duplicate of what left Britain that came to Africa. I wish to ask, the British education produces Range Rover, it produces Land Rover, it produces Caterpillar. Where is that portion of that education when they say Anglo-Saxon? When they were transferring it, where did the technology of Range Rover go to? Why did it not put in the education? Where the technology of Range Rover go to, did not put in the education? We have the French subsystem of education as propounded by so many people in Africa. And we say it boldly on television and different screens across the globe. That same education in France produces Renault. It produces Peugeot. It produces Bugatti. That same education is part of the education that produces the Airbus, because the Airbus is assembled by 3 countries in Europe. Part is assembled in Madrid, Spain. Part is assembled in Stuttgart in Germany. And part is assembled in Toulouse in France. So you have France, Spain, and Germany that produces the Airbus. That Airbus technology is part of that French subsystem.
And of course, the pundits have actually identified digital transformation and even technological innovation to be one of that aspect that African continent can capitalize on to change the narrative.
Yes. We can change it. That's the reason why you see I keep insisting that as much as we are permitted to learn from everywhere, we must be able to make our own ideas unique that fits this continent. When Chinese and Japanese and Australians travel to Europe and America, they don't go back home with used fans and used beds and used vehicles. No. They go back home with CDs. Those CDs are recorded informations of what they have learned at home and abroad. So you see somebody who traveled from China to Europe for 10 years, he's come back home with a little bag. But an Africa has come
Can
with
I
a
chime in?
It tells you the mentality is different. I told you I was in London last year, and when I went to the famous London Bridge, they call it Tower Bridge, I saw students who came from China, they came from Japan, they came from India, they were doing research. We went to the powerhouse. There is a video screen that is kept there for all the producers who mounted that bridge. They keep giving a report on how they construct that bridge. You see Chinese, they are there writing. If you see all those tower bridges they are constructing, there is a transparent glass. You stand far up on story buildings. You can look down. If you want to Rotterdam, I'm sure you must have seen that. You stand on a transparent glass. China got that idea from Britain because the St. Paul went there and studied. The most expensive universities in England are attended by Chinese.
Yes,
for
that's
your
very
information.
true.
Chinese people
And
go there the most,
my-
the people who attended the most expensive university to do what, to draw the technology and go back. Africans are enough in Europe who have attended those universities. But the bad thing is that they never come back here. Why? The atmosphere does not give them the opportunity to leverage their
But I
potential.
think, Dr. AMBE, there seems to be a wind of change across Africa, especially a political revolution.
I'm coming to that. We are moving to the wind of change in Africa, and it's already taking place in the west of Africa.
Absolutely.
4 countries have already championed that move, and I think the wind will blow to Central Africa, South Africa, and the part of the rest of the continent Africa.
Yeah.
This is this wind of change we are looking for. Somebody said, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. What is doing Africa is politics. It's not lack of skill, no lack of potential, no lack of science, no lack of technology. It will be shocking to realize that most of the recent developments out of the country in Europe and America are done by Africans who are already established there. What's the problem? The atmosphere leverages. It gives them the opportunity to leverage their potential. So we need a conducive atmosphere. You will find that those people you think are far away in abroad and in Germany and other parts of the world, they are right there in Banso, they are there in Balikumbat, they are there in Bafut, they are there in Yaoundé and Douala. Those people are there, but now we don't have the atmosphere.
And of course, I think even the atmosphere, it also transcends also to the mindset and the selective
Yes.
perception and exposure. You know, when we are talking at these stakes, Dr. AMBE, we want to look at the place of the African youth. Let's contextualize it and bring it to the Republic of Cameroon. How intentional, because you are a youth leader, I think you've been very engaged with young people, seeing how intentional do you think they are in wanting to change perspectives around the country. For example, social media, the internet came. It's a good ecosystem that young people can, capitalize on to be able to learn and bring those new ideas that will help. But then when you want to go through the internet ecosystem, it becomes worrisome because of the selective exposure that the young people in Cameroon have chosen. How can we fix this?
It has to do with cyber policies. It has to do with cyber policies. The government should be fully involved in controlling the cyberspace of this country. Do you know TikTok was created by the Chinese?
Absolutely.
The Chinese don't use the TikTok we use.
Yeah, and that's why it is problematic.
Yeah, that's why I'm letting you understand. The Chinese don't use the TikTok we use. The Chinese TikTok does not go show youths exposing their breasts and dancing and showing all kinds of rubbish. The Chinese TikTok is very educative. The only company that has a software established in China, Google is not in China. Facebook is not in China. WhatsApp is not in China. They have their
own applications.
Those apps are there to communicate the Chinese policies. Now, the whole nation is being influenced by what the government has set in place. The only person that has a software in China is Apple. And Apple is operating based on the Chinese instruction. And it's because they succumb, and that's the reason why they have an opportunity to sell in China. Coming back to Africa, our cyberspace is not protected. All junks and rubbish and trash from pornography, and then now it's all kinds of drug and all kinds of abusive activities and children.
That is the question, because we
Children
think
are
about the
exposed.
effects of that on tomorrow's generation.
The social media educates our children more than our classrooms.
And the content now matters.
Because out of 24 hours we have in a day, children sometimes spend 14 of those hours on social media. And what you spend time more on, that's what you reflect. So you have the comedy kids. You don't see constructive, educative programs that can bring technology, bring development, bring agriculture. What we see there is comedy kids dancing naked, exposing your bra because you think you can easily cash out.
Absolutely.
With a few amount of dollars given to you because you have monetized your page.
The platform.
And they think that doing what is trending, doing what can easily attract viewers is what we need on social media. So you see that a government has built cyber policies that protects the space of what their citizens consume. What we consume here in Africa is a toxic of the social media. And that's how we produce more scammers, because the reflection of education is the kind of people you produce. What they are educated is what they reflect. So if we see you have more scammers in Africa, we have more prostitutes in Africa, we have more girls, strippers in Africa, it's a sign that what we're educating them on our cyberspace is what they are reflecting in return.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why we have to bring up government policies that restrict the operation of certain content on our cyberspace.
Sure.
So, going back to a place like America, you won't see them educating their people with all those kind of trash.
Same in Russia, which
People
I
are
actually
being trained in America
experienced,
to
you
be
know.
superior. You go to Russia, it's the same thing. You can't
It's the
see
same.
trash in their cyberspace.
Absolutely.
Everybody is protecting what people consume in the economy. But that's rather unfortunate. Almost everyone who completed university now in Africa who has nothing to do goes and creates a page on Facebook to make money. So they will post anything to attract viewers because they want to make money for themselves, hereby criticizing others. Do you know that almost every comedian in Africa has a gambling code that they will tell you after this?
Absolutely.
Promote my promo code,
And
one
it's
XBet,
actually
one XBet.
very worrisome.
How does a people think that they can get rich through gambling?
Because if we're talking about the new Africa, a new perspective for Africa, this is we are capitalizing on the young people.
Yes.
And I see
70% of Africa's
young.
population
I do
is
engage
youth.
with young people in other countries, South Africa, Ghana,
Yes.
and Kenya, and there are so much involved because, you know, people always say we don't want to get used to politics, but you know, even there is political economics and even social politics that we need to understand to be able to survive in the more connected and more complex world. Now, you quite mentioned the fact that, you know, in the United Kingdom, what you discover. Now, we want to look at the place, how lack of data is even helping to derail the total change or transformation across Africa. We are looking at how maybe financial data policy and even data on the environmental data, economic data. How can we work on structures, be it maybe political stakeholders and also economic stakeholders, to make sure that there is availability of data that will even fast track or facilitate foreign direct investment and the policies that align with?
That is one major disadvantage you don't have in the continent Africa. If they tell you when that bridge was constructed, it's around the Great Bridge, the Tower Bridge in London, is around the 16th something century.
Yeah.
But they still have videos of all those who constructed those bridges. We don't have data in Africa. We don't keep records of. A clear example is to realize that, is to see that, for instance, Clarice, if you check companies in Europe, there are companies that were established in 1446, 1664. There's a drink they call 1664. That was when the drink was established. There are companies that were established in 18-something, 17-something. But look in Africa, how many companies were established within that period and they are still existing till date?
Yeah.
You hardly find that. It tells you we don't have a trace from where our businesses start to where they are going to. Mm-hmm. We don't have any business in Africa that is 100 years old. It's difficult to find.
Sure.
So it tells you that if a people are running a business that has not lasted for 100 years, Cameroonians are opening companies after every 2 weeks, after every 1 month. But after 2-3 months, those companies disappear into thin air.
Okay.
We start businesses don't last because we don't have any track record of what is happening. You go to our data, you go to look for research. Somebody was doing a PhD in Yaoundé in history and called me and said he doesn't know where he was going to get information on issues concerning that should help him communicate in this area, in this area, in this area.
Yeah.
And I told him that, listen to me, my brother. The ideas you are asking from me can only be gotten from somebody who existed within that period. If our archive center does not have a record of what happened in this period, then we are just going to be wasting our time.
Absolutely.
We don't have a track record of data that have been kept in the past so that the generation coming ahead could learn from the errors as well as the strength of all those data.
Of course, Dr. Ambia, KOUAM is back with us. I think we'll be going now to Yaoundé. Coming to you, KOUAM, we have discussed a lot pertaining the issues of the African continent and how we can fix this, especially as far as the young Africans are concerned. It's often said that when people are economically viable, it's difficult for them to engage in acts of radicalism or even acts of terrorism. So the question is now let's look at how African economies can adapt shifting global trade patterns and disruption to ensure sustainable growth and development across Africa. That will make the youths very busy positively and constructively.
So, given we've talking about how Africa can take advantage of these global opportunities, I think the first thing is that beyond calling for Africans to have a greater voice in the United Nations and at the World Bank, we equally have to call for greater responsibility. And it means
absolutely
that starts from you, from the youths, not responsibility that's looking towards the leaders. So the first thing is that before we have this African consciousness, we all have to try and become much more responsible to recognize what we have achieved, where our shortcomings are, and what we can do in order to improve the future for other Africans. So that's the first thing. But secondly, I think we need to rethink the global financial architecture, because at present, for every single dollar that the African Development Bank gets, it can lend out $5. And this is not the case for the World Bank or other multilateral institutions. We also have to rethink the special drawing rights from the IMF to make sure that they don't only lend to countries who are most vulnerable, but also allow the special drawing rights allow specific funding mechanisms to be used to support countries that are equally developing and show strong prospects. We shouldn't be only trying to help poor countries. We should be trying to help middle-income countries and high-income countries such that there's a broader convergence. And in terms of Africa's youth, I think we always say that the youth have to create jobs, they have to become independent, etc. That isn't enough. We have to invest in our youths, and we don't have to allow this investment to come from the government. It's the government, the private sector, the non-governmental organizations. We all have to play our part to ensure that youths have access to 21st century skills. What we do at the Cameroon Economic Policy Institute is when we get youths together in a room, we don't teach them about machine learning and about artificial intelligence. No. We teach them how to use Google Drive, how to create emails, how to market their business on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. Because those are the real skills that are going to allow these youths to grow their businesses and employ others. So the narrative has to move away from getting the copy and paste model from the West, because sometimes we do copy what has worked elsewhere. But we have to make sure that when we meet with our youth, we're giving them skills that they can use for the rest of their lives. We're making sure that they are equipped to be able to go out there, start their small business, be it snail rearing, or be it a consulting company, and employ others. So I think one of the solutions, the youth, the demographic dividend that Africa has, should be seen as an opportunity and not as a threat. It's true that the growing population means that governments have to spend more on education and healthcare, but it also means that we can develop the kind of capacity China has had for years, a capacity to consume that's accompanied by forward-looking policies. Secondly, I would like to again re-emphasize the need for free trade. African countries have signed the African. How many businesses are trading?
Okay.
Yeah, African Center of Trading. We have to ourselves bring down the barriers and improve trade from one border to the patient in Nigeria and vice versa. We have to ensure that when our ports are built properly. We've been talking. I've heard you guys, my co-panelists, talk about illicit flows of or pharmaceutical products or other types of drugs. The only way we can solve these problems is by investing in our infrastructure, making sure that our ports have the requisite infrastructure to be able to verify what enters the country and leaves the country. It's already done in countries like Sweden and Norway and other European countries. We can build indigenous, but either way, we have to trade between ourselves in order to ensure that we develop successfully and all sure can see their goods used locally in the continent. Secondly, we have to emphasize the need for greater education. If we don't have an educated workforce, we don't have a productive workforce. So we're not only calling on governments to invest, we're calling for private sector and NGO action to ensure that we provide an alternative to government, because government alone can build roads connecting cities and towns and countries, but it's up to individuals, up to organizations, up to that are trained, have the capacity to lead development locally. Finally, thank you very much.
I'll come back to you subsequently,
Sorry.
Henri KOUAM. Sorry for the technical lapses. I think, Dr. AMBE, I'm always very concerned about the transformation of the African youth. And when I hear people have invited experts to talk about we have to invest in on the youth and other aspects to see that they actually thrive. The question is, how conversant or aware are African young people? I want to take the example of the Republic of Cameroon. How conversant are the youths that they really need to invest in themselves? How can we change the mindsets, not actually decolonizing the mindset, but trying to wipe out what we have copied, which is, with the advent of the internet that I already talked about, there is what I call citizen journalism that is actually increasing out there, and you see how the media, especially social media, through citizen journalists, is misleading the young people, putting ideas that are unfounded on the minds and making people more radical than rational. How can we change this perspective now that the wind of change is blowing, especially across the political lines? Because when we have a buoyant young people in politics, they'll be able to chart good policies and engage well, even with international partners.
Yeah, it has to do with leadership. A people cannot go beyond the capacity of their leader. Look at what Traoré did over the social media in Burkina Faso.
Yeah, that's quite commendable indeed. It's quite commendable.
Everybody that posting now in Burkina Faso is adjusting because you don't post any trash. The new law is that if you are found with an exposed body as a lady on social media, you're going to pay a particular amount of money or you go for 3 years imprisonment. I think we have to set up laws that will put fear in the heart of children. As a matter of fact, almost every African child has been reduced to a place of a gambler by the 1xbet stuff and the other bets that are on social media. Youths do not want to do anything else. They are thinking that by some grace and some stroke of luck, they will strike a deal with one of the xbet company and make good money. And all the comedians we have on social media, they have a promo code to push youth to gamble. And you realize that almost every youth that has left the university that doesn't have a job, they begin to look at this gambling bet or these bets as means to make money very fast in the continent. One of the greatest frustrations is when the people no longer use their mind and their abilities. They are waiting for some money to be gained through some betting or some gambling. A nation that is reduced with gamblers has no future. And I can tell you, whether directly or indirectly, almost every Cameroonian, African at this level right now are fully engaged in all the betting games. Who told them that the betting companies don't want money before they came to throw money at them?
That is the problem.
That's what the problem is. You see somebody and say that Arsenal is playing today, I've betted 100,000, I've bet 50,000, I've bet 25,000. He's sitting and praying and meditating. That 100,000 invested in some business somewhere with within a month can produce even 200,000 francs. So the workforce, the skill, somebody who has studied economics in the university, he was supposed to be applying the economics in the market to make things work. Instead, he's somewhere gambling, thinking that he may win some 200 million. The shortcut to make wealth in Africa has killed the ability and the potentials of the people. And all these things are introduced to our social media space. That is where the problem is, because the information you feed yourself with is what drives your actions, is what drives your philosophy, is what drives your destiny. And I think that what we consume as Africans should be into serious consideration, because there's something to call mental malnutrition, not just bodily malnutrition. The malnutrition of the African continent is that we are fed with the wrong food. Malnutrition is when you are not fed. It's when you are fed with the wrong food.
Absolutely.
Yes. There's a difference between hunger,
yeah.
starvation, and malnutrition. So we have mental malnutrition. We are malnourished mentally. If you go to Japan, an old man of 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, they are still on the internet searching the most recent information, the most developed, because they are following the trends of time to see how they can be able to catch up. So old age in Japan has nothing to do with your bodily structure. It has to do with your mind. A man who has a recent mind with an old body is a youth.
And I think this transcends even to the values of a country, yeah?
Of course.
And it brings us again to the question why African countries will put aside their values and try to set policies in line with international values. And let's look at how negatively this has affected the continent.
A simple example is that we don't valorize even our culture anymore. We are living with outside culture because this culture we borrowed from the social media.
Yeah.
Look, for instance, the culture is not just a means of entertainment. The culture is a source of revenue to a country.
Absolutely.
It's a source of revenue to a country. We don't consume our music. We don't consume our traditional regalia. We don't consume our traditional meals. We have the Chinese restaurant. We have this restaurant. People are trying to eat in a Chinese restaurant in Africa.
And even the language, we relegate it.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So because we don't valorize the culture, people are using their culture in other parts of the world to make good sums of money. It will be shocking to realize that China does not celebrate Christmas, but they use Christmas as a means of making one of their greatest income in their nation, which is not even a feast they respect or they practice. But they are looking how they can take what we are interested in to make their money.
Absolutely.
We are almost consuming everything Chinese in this country. There is no home you will enter without seeing a Chinese pant or T-shirt or a cup or something concerning China. It tells you because China does not go to the market to make profit. China's go to win over the market. And it's an international law. According to international law, that is an abuse of the business terrain. That's what Jack Ma did recently in China, and he was almost shut down. Yes. What did he do? He created many apps with different names and then put his product in all those apps. So if you tap Changchu, you are still getting to Jack Ma. You leave Changchu, go to Xingqing, you are getting to Jack Ma. So they saw that it was an abuse over the business fair in China because he was trying to monopolize almost everything. And they sanctioned and he paid 100 million. Now, coming back to the international globe, China goes to a country, it says a shoe for 1,000 francs. But there is a shoe from Europe that is more effective, that is strong, for 10,000 francs. We'll buy the one for 1,000 francs because it is cheap.
Yeah.
Why are we buying? It tells you that China is not just going to make income. They want to seize the market. By the time everybody becomes China conscious, they'll be making 10 francs per shoe, but they are selling to 10 million persons per day.
Yeah.
So by so doing, they have seized the market. Now, we cannot even consume our own products anymore. When last did you show your children Togu in Christmas? If not going to Douche in Douala to buy the Chinese-made party gowns, as well as jean T-shirts and suits, and as well as Tunisia came from China. When last did you show your chai Ankara in Christmas?
Yeah.
So what about the culture? We don't even sell the culture anymore, which is a very huge source of income to many economies. And we are buying the Chinese culture because what they are selling to us is what they wear there.
And absolutely, and that's why it's good that the world is open now, and we can travel to Queensland. And it's one of the points that stakeholders from Russia were mentioning about upholding the culture of countries, especially on the continent Africa, where is the place of culture. agriculture that we can capitalize on, even to boost the tourism industry.
Yes.
These are some of the aspects we can capitalize on to be able to reduce unemployment
In the
that we have,
country.
in the country, or continent Africa. If all is good with Henry, we're almost culminating. We want to go out with, I always want us also to close a program with recommendations regarding our topic for discussions. What better strategies?
Excuse my lack of a camera, but I would say that what we have, like I said before, other than trade, the next thing is that we need greater responsibility. If we're going to emphasize the role of African countries multilaterally, and if we want to keep it together, then I think we also have to make sure that it comes to some responsibility. Secondly, I think we need to acknowledge that what we've been doing hasn't worked and find a much more sustainable way to go about. At CEPI, what we recommend is a comprehensive reinvestment in human capital, in infrastructure, and also a re-emphasis on trade. But ultimately, we want a continent where youth are making and selling across the borders and not trying to export countries out of the country. It's okay to engage in international trade, but the model of development that we see in one where 99% of people are entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial. Doing that means that we can create countless jobs that can absorb as many youth as we need, and also reduce the reliance on government. In summary, what we need in Africa is limited government, strong rule of law, a good business environment, and free market thrive. If we remove that emphasis away from government and stop focusing on social safety and start focusing on entrepreneurship, then I think it's going to be much better for us over the long run. And finally, I think we shouldn't try to get to one region or try to get close to one region in order to punish them. I think we give our European and American partners the heart and we should, but we should also realize and recognize what we do to them. If we need skills or we need competencies or we need investment, human capital and financial investment, we should acknowledge that and then try to leverage those to make a much better environment for our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry KOUAM, for your insight, and we hope that next time we'll have the atmosphere will be very fluent for us to better engage on this educative, informative program. Coming back to you, Mr. Dr. AMBE Valentine, while you were talking earlier on, you cited one aspect of leadership, and today we are talking about leadership that is people-oriented, leadership that is intentional. Let's come back to this. I want us to actually conclude while looking at the core. It's those at the hem that will have a lot to play. I want us to capitalize a bit on the Russian-Ukraine crisis to be able to understand a leadership that defends the sovereignty or the interest of the country. Today, many people, especially those who are actually consuming mainstream media, they will be very categorical to say Putin is a bad leader, in quotes, certain things. But then you understand that that is a leadership that has refused infiltration that will kill the country. For example, let's look at what is happening between Israel and Palestine. Israel refused to act when the U.S. warned that if you continue to block aid from entering Gaza, we are going to reverse our policies. And you saw how Israel immediately opened some checkpoints for humanitarian workers to be able to enter with food. The same in the Russian-Ukraine crisis. You see the leadership of Ukraine saying Russia may win if the West doesn't give us aid, and is even mad at the U.S. Congress for not actually voting the bill that will warrant them disburse money or military aid to Ukraine for the
to combat
crisis,
Russia.
the proxy war that is ongoing. Now, how can our leaders learn from the qualities of a leader like Vladimir Putin? I will bet you that Russians are with their leadership because they have understood the stakes and the narratives around everything, especially around geopolitical lines.
I will repeat what Mandela said. Mandela said after he was elected president and invited to the United States, and he said, some people think that their enemy must be everyone's enemy.
Absolutely.
We are working with the people who have stood and defended us. And Palestine has defended us in the course of our struggle. So Palestine may be an enemy to the United States, but not an enemy to South Africa.
Sure.
Because your enemy mustn't be my enemy.
Absolutely.
People have their beliefs concerning Vladimir Putin. People have their philosophy concerning Putin because they have where they are standing on.
Yeah.
Any country and any leader that does not protect the interests of its nation and the people is not a leader.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason why you see when Trump came, Trump said America first. He won the attention of America. The reason why the Gabonese respected Omar Bongo because he said Gabon d'abord.
Yes.
Gabon d'abord. If you look at Traore's approach right now in Burkina Faso, it's Burkina first.
First, yeah.
So you look, Putin has a policy that protects Russia and Russia's interests worldwide.
Absolutely.
And no people will rally and fight against a leader that protects the interests. So your philosophy about Putin is what you hold about him. It's not what the Russians hold about Putin. Because even in Cameroon, every time a father protects the children, no matter the father's weakness, the children will defend their father.
Sure.
You can't sell off your children in public and expect them to praise you or appreciate you. So Vladimir Putin is a leader that's supposed to be a role model to most leaders of the world, because there are many leaders who are very vulnerable. They have traded the destiny of their nation.
Contextualizing it in Africa, looking at
for their interests at the expense of their citizens.
Sure.
You sell the resources of a country because you want to stay in power, and you are looking for help outside to protect you to stay in power. And now you see, you are not working anymore for the development of the country. You are working more to defend your office in the government. And this is the reason why most African countries are suffering, because why they have leaders who are very selfish. They are working to protect their stay in power. They are not working to protect the interests of the people in their country. So Putin was re-elected with 87-point-something% in an election. Somebody may think that they rigged the elections. It's not because they rigged the elections. They have found somebody.
I was actually on the field and part of the observer mission in Russia, and with the situational centers that were all over the national territory. I could categorically see, of course, the transparency and the credibility of it. So how can Africa use its its more multipolar world, and countries are engaging with new partners? How can we now learn from the leadership of Russia to define our own agenda as we are in the world of new perspective?
African leaders should go away from masters and work with those who protect their interests. Russia is not working with any country because the people love Russia. The people are working with Russia because Russia protects their interests. And that is Vladimir Putin's philosophy, and he's extending it to his foreign policy. The foreign policy of Putin is to make sure that African countries whose rights were taken many years ago be restored. And those countries are supposed to be independent as in independence. And manage their resources as they are supposed to manage their resources. So if you look at his philosophy in his foreign policy, it's the same philosophy applying at the national policy, where he protects the poor first. So I think African leaders should know very well that there is no country like home, and there is no better place you can find solace, because most of them live a life where when they retire from government, they can't stay in their own country. That's a very bad system. How can you be living a life thinking that tomorrow, once you retire from government, you won't have the opportunity to stay in your country? Live a life that tomorrow you can sit back at home as a mentor, and the younger generation come to you for consultancy, and they question what they did and what they can do that will make the nation go forward.
Sure.
But unfortunately, almost every African president is going from power and they are disappearing. Look at what Macky happened in Senegal. Immediately they saw in Bashiru, he ran away from office, from the nation. What kind of leadership is that? But you see, Putin cannot go out of power in Russia and look for someone to go ahead because he has protected the interest of the Russians and they would like to keep him alive.
And I think Ghana is one country in Africa that has always seen some sort of democracy. It's true that there's a lot of controversy ahead of these elections.
Lately, the recent leadership in power, there's a lot of controversy in Ghana, and a lot of question marks because even the Ghanaian city has fallen and other things are not in place.
Now, we're looking at in terms of former head of state still being very viable and useful to even incumbents.
Yes, that's why I'm saying that any nation, any leader that protects the interests of his people, is not just practicing democracy, even if it is socialism or communism, as far as the leader is interested in the well-being of his people. You see? Yes. If you look at the Indonesian leader who came there and turned the nation around, he was working for the interests of Indonesia. Singaporean president that came. He was one that came and then revived the nation and brought it to where it's today. So I think it's important for us to value and respect leaders that work for the interests of their people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. AMBE. We're going to come subsequently to such topics or programs to discuss, especially we need actually to understand that African agenda that will help the continent, especially have a greater voice at the international arena at the time of multilateralism. I want to thank you for your great insight, Dr. AMBE Valentine. It was a great time with you.
It's an honor, Clarice. Thank you very much also for the opportunity to educate Africans.
You're welcome, and thank you to HENRI KOUAM, founder and executive director, Cameroon Economic Policy Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for trusting the Pan-African Television for You Media. It's on this note that we draw the curtains into today's edition of Global Insider, but don't go away. Keep having a lovely moment in the company of our transmissions, and remember, it's another view of the world.